Imagine holding a device so powerful, not because of its technology, but because of its presence in people's lives, that it becomes part of an entire generation's identity. A phone that didn't just connect calls, it connected people to a new era. A brand so dominant that at one point, nearly half the world's mobile users were using it. That brand was Nokia. But here's the part that feels almost impossible to believe. Within less than a decade, this unstoppable giant collapsed so dramatically that it was forced to sell its core business and walk away from the very industry it once ruled. So what really happened? How does a company go from owning the market to losing everything? This is not just a story about phones. This is a story about power, pride, missed opportunities, and the cost of failing to evolve. The rise. Building an empire. Nokia's story didn't begin with phones. It began in the 19th century as a small Finnish company producing paper and rubber products. Over time, it expanded into multiple industries, including cables and electronics. But the real turning point came in the 1990s, when Nokia made a bold and focused decision to concentrate entirely on telecommunications. At that time, the mobile phone industry was still in its early stages. Phones were bulky, expensive, and often unreliable. Nokia saw an opportunity not just to participate in this market, but to define it. And that's exactly what they did. By the late 1990s, Nokia had transformed itself into the world's leading mobile phone manufacturer. Their devices were known for something incredibly important: simplicity. While competitors focused on complexity, Nokia built phones that were intuitive, durable, and designed for everyday people. Their designs became iconic. Their user interfaces were easy to understand. Their battery life was unmatched. And then came the phones that would define a generation. Devices like the Nokia 3310 became cultural symbols. It wasn't just a phone, it was a statement of reliability. People trusted Nokia because their phones simply worked. They didn't break easily, they didn't confuse users, they just delivered. At its peak, Nokia controlled more than 40% of the global mobile phone market. That level of dominance is almost unheard of in any industry. In fact, Nokia wasn't just leading the market, it was the market. The warning signs: success breeds complacency. But success has a hidden danger. When a company dominates for too long, it starts to believe that its position is permanent. By the early 2000s, cracks had already begun to form beneath Nokia's seemingly perfect surface. The market was slowly changing. New manufacturers, particularly from Asia, began producing cheaper alternatives. These competitors didn't have Nokia's brand power, but they were agile and aggressive. At the same time, technology itself was evolving. Phones were no longer just communication devices, they were beginning to hint at something bigger, something more powerful. But Nokia didn't fully recognize the magnitude of this shift. They were still winning, still selling, still dominating, and that created a dangerous illusion that nothing needed to change. The disruption. A new era begins. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 2007, Steve Jobs stood on a stage and introduced the world to the first Apple iPhone. At first glance, it looked like just another phone, but in reality, it was something entirely different. The iPhone wasn't built around hardware, it was built around software. It introduced a full touchscreen interface, eliminating the need for physical keypads. It created a new kind of user experience, one that felt fluid, intuitive, and almost magical. But the real revolution wasn't the device itself, it was the ecosystem behind it. With the introduction of the App Store, phones were no longer just tools. They became platforms. Suddenly, your phone could be anything: your camera, your gaming console, your office, your entertainment system. And this is where Nokia made its biggest mistake. They didn't see the shift, the failure to adapt, missing the future. Nokia believed that hardware would continue to define the market. They focused on making their phones stronger, more durable, and more reliable. But the world had moved on. Consumers no longer cared only about how long a phone could last. They cared about what it could do. Nokia's operating system, Symbian, had once been a leader in the early smartphone era. But as the industry evolved, it began to show its limitations. It was difficult for developers to work with. It lacked flexibility. It couldn't compete with the sleek modern experiences offered by iOS and Android. While competitors were building ecosystems, Nokia was still building devices. And in the new world of smartphones, that simply wasn't enough. The collapse. A giant falls. The decline was not slow, it was brutal. In 2007, Nokia held nearly half of the global smartphone market. Within just a few years, that number dropped to single digits. Consumers moved away, developers ignored the platform, and Nokia's once unshakable dominance began to crumble. Inside the company, things were not much better. Nokia had grown into a massive organization with layers of management. Decision-making became slow. Innovation was trapped in bureaucracy. Teams struggled to align. There were ideas within the company, good ideas, but they never reached the market fast enough. While competitors were moving quickly and adapting to change, Nokia was stuck, unable to keep up with the pace of the industry it once led. The final gamble. A decision too late. By the time Nokia realized the scale of the problem, it was already behind. In 2011, the company made a bold and controversial decision. It partnered with Microsoft and abandoned its own operating system in favor of Windows Phone. The move was meant to reset Nokia's position in the market, but timing was everything, and Nokia was too late. By then, the smartphone ecosystem had already consolidated around two major players, Apple's iOS and Google's Android. Developers were already committed, consumers were already invested. Windows Phone, despite its innovation, struggled to gain traction. It lacked the app ecosystem. It lacked the momentum. And Nokia, once again, found itself on the wrong side of the market. The end of an era. In 2013, Nokia made the decision that marked the end of its dominance. It sold its mobile phone division to Microsoft for billions of euros, for a company that once defined an entire industry. This was more than just a business decision. It was the closing of a chapter. Microsoft attempted to revive the brand through its Lumia devices, but the effort failed to reverse the trend. Within a few years, even Microsoft stepped away from the smartphone race. And just like that, the era of Nokia phones came to an end. The lesson. Why this story matters. Nokia's fall wasn't caused by a single mistake. It was the result of a series of decisions, each one pushing the company further away from the future. They underestimated change. They overestimated their position. And they failed to adapt when it mattered most. But perhaps the most important lesson is this. Nokia didn't fail because it lacked talent, resources, or opportunity. It failed because it stopped listening, stopped evolving, stopped questioning its own assumptions. Today, Nokia still exists, but not as the company we once knew. It no longer sits in your pocket. It no longer defines your daily life, and it no longer leads the conversation. Instead, it operates quietly in the background, building the networks, the infrastructure, the invisible systems that keep the modern world connected. In many ways, it has returned to its roots, no longer the face of innovation, but the foundation beneath it. And maybe there's something poetic about that. Because while the world moved forward, Nokia didn't completely disappear. It adapted. It survived. Just not in the way anyone expected, but its story, its rise and fall, remains one of the most powerful case studies in business history. Not because it failed, but because of how it failed. Because it reminds us of something simple, yet deeply uncomfortable. No matter how big you are, no matter how dominant you seem, no matter how untouchable you feel in the moment, you are never truly safe. Because the world doesn't stand still. It evolves. It shifts. It reinvents itself again and again. And somewhere, right now, there is always someone building something better, something faster, something smarter, something that makes everything you created feel outdated overnight. The danger isn't competition. The danger is believing you've already won. Because the moment you stop questioning, the moment you stop adapting, the moment you start protecting the past instead of building the future, that's the moment you begin to fall. Nokia didn't collapse in a single day. It happened slowly, quietly, decision by decision. A missed opportunity here, a delayed reaction there, a belief that we still have time. Until one day, there was no time left. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Because it's not just about a company, it's about a mindset. A reminder that success is never permanent, and relevance is something you have to earn every single day. So the real question isn't, how did Nokia fall? The real question is, who's next? If this story made you think, if it changed the way you see success, failure, or innovation, then make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, which company today reminds you of Nokia? Because the next rise and the next fall is already happening.